Can you I just know this from doing my homework on, your, the work that you do. Can you comment on your work relative to NFL and brain trauma for, soldiers, and, what your involvement is in that?
Yeah. So we've been working with some brain imaging techniques to try and enable the diagnosis of this disease called CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, that affects athletes in collision sports, football, hockey, rugby, and vets or former battlefield exposure, people who've been war fighters exposed to IEDs. The repetitive exposure to IEDs causes rattling of the brain in the skull, sort of in the same sort of way as repetitive hits of the head in sports does. So this is turning out to be a complication of involving a substantial number of folks in both of those professions. It's now not possible to diagnose the disease during life, and that makes it impossible to really even estimate what the prevalence is, because we're biased by autopsy studies. So we're using some of the new brain imaging techniques that will specifically see the pathology of CTE, and we've begun to be able to see that during life. So we do have, I think we will soon be able to identify folks who already have fairly advanced CTE and be able, if they're still having exposure, be able to advise them to limit, they might want to limit ongoing exposure in terms of sports or being on the battlefield. What we don't have yet is something that's going to be useful very early. These these techniques, this imaging technique, looks like it sees people once the disease has already begun, and so we can at least perhaps advise people to refrain from things that are causing head trauma, so that they can cease the progression. But we would like to be able to prevent it from ever happening at all.
What's the organization, Sam, up in the Boston area that is the one that does it sounds like it does the autopsy work on NFL players anyway?
Yeah, so that's at BU. That's at the CTE Center.
Okay.
Because
I know I know reading this over the summer, it might have been the Wall Street Journal or something, but Nick Bonacani, if you remember him, as a Miami Dolphin, great player, and he was the 111th brain that was donated to Boston University. Now I didn't know that was them. And of 111 NFL players that they did an autopsy on, 110 had this CTE. Did I get that right?
Out of 110 symptomatic players.
Okay.
So this is not random players.
Okay, got it.
These are people who were referred there because they had the clinical symptoms of CTE when they died.
When they were alive.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's part of those numbers are the scary numbers. And they're biased because those people, we knew that they had the symptoms, so yes, the pathology matched the symptoms.
So they're almost confirming it.
Exactly. It's like if you went to a nursing home full of demented people and they all had Alzheimer's disease, you wouldn't be surprised. So those are the numbers we're trying to not combat, but to try and get more relevant to living people, because that's the autopsy bias that's caused some fright that everyone in the NFL is going to get CTE. Right. That's by no means the case. Boxers get concussed even more, and it's clear that not all boxers dement. I'm sure there are genetic factors that play a role, as well as other things. But I think we'll understand a lot more about it as we start to be able to diagnose it early on.